Aesop's Fable EP67, the tree that calculated its growth. Scene 1, the young tree's curiosity. In a beautiful, sunlit forest, there stood a young tree named Tallis. Tallis was just beginning to grow, with a few strong branches reaching out toward the sky. Tallis loved hearing stories from the older trees about how tall and strong they had become over the years, and Tallis dreamed of growing tall and strong as well. One day, as Tallis basked in the warm sunlight, he wondered, how quickly am I growing? How long will it take for my branches to spread wide and tall like the older trees? Tallis realized that to find out, he would need to start measuring the growth of his branches each year. But he wasn't sure how to calculate how much he grew each year. So, Tallis decided to seek advice from the wisest tree in the forest, Grandfather Oak. Scene 2, learning about growth rates. Grandfather Oak was the oldest and tallest tree in the forest, with branches that spread far and wide. Tallis looked up in awe as he approached. Grandfather Oak, Tallis began, I want to understand how fast I'm growing, but I don't know how to measure it. Can you help me? Grandfather Oak smiled kindly and replied, Of course, young Tallis. To calculate how much you grow each year, you need to measure your branches at the end of each year and then compare the measurements. The difference between the two measurements will tell you how much you've grown in 1 year. If you keep track of this each year, you can even figure out your average growth rate. Tallis was eager to begin. So, if I measure my branches now, and then again at the end of the year, I can subtract the first measurement from the second to find out how much I've grown? Exactly, Grandfather Oak confirmed. And if you do this every year, you can find out how much you're growing on average each year. That's your growth rate. Scene 3, calculating the growth. With Grandfather Oak's advice in mind, Tallis started measuring the length of his longest branch. He marked the end of the branch carefully and noted the length. At the end of the year, Tallis measured the branch again and found that it had grown by 12 inches. The next year, Tallis measured again and found that the same branch had grown another 15 inches. In the third year, it grew by 10 inches. Tallis was thrilled to see his progress but also curious about his average growth rate. To calculate the average growth rate, Tallis added up the growth for all 3 years. 12 inches plus 15 inches plus 10 inches equals 37 inches of growth over 3 years. Tallis then divided the total growth by the number of years, which was 3, to find the average growth per year. 37 inches divided by 3 years equals approximately 12.33 inches per year. Tallis was excited to see that on average, his branches were growing about 12 inches each year. Scene 4, growing strong and tall. As the years went by, Tallis continued to measure his growth and calculate his growth rate. He noticed that some years he grew more, and some years less, depending on the weather and how much sunlight and rain he received. But by keeping track of his growth and calculating the average, Tallis could see his progress over time. Tallis shared his findings with the other young trees in the forest. By measuring our growth and calculating our growth rate, he told them, we can understand how we're growing and what we might expect in the future. It's a way to stay motivated and see how far we've come. The other trees were inspired by Tallis's example and began measuring their growth as well. Over time, the young trees grew tall and strong, just like the older trees in the forest. And Tallis knew that his careful calculations had helped him stay on track to reach his full potential. Tallis felt proud of the tall, strong tree he had become, and he was grateful to Grandfather Oak for teaching him how to calculate his growth. He knew that with patience and careful measurement, he could continue to grow and thrive for many years to come. Moral of the story: measuring and calculating growth helps us understand our progress and plan for the future. By keeping track of our growth and calculating averages, we can stay motivated and see how far we've come, just like Tallis the tree.